I'm Miranda, 34, standing in my parents' doorway, clutching a perfectly wrapped gift and homemade apple pie. The scent of roast turkey wafts through the air as Christmas carols play softly in the background. Despite years of family tension, I arrived with hope in my heart that this year might be different. I never imagined I'd end up back in my car, tears streaming down my face after my brother Travis smirked and asked why they'd waste a seat on me. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt excluded by family during what should be the happiest time of year. Growing up as the middle child between Travis, 37, and Lauren, 31, taught me early that family dynamics aren't always fair. From the moment Travis was born, he was the golden child in our parents' eyes. Richard and Susan Parker had a clear hierarchy of affection with Travis at the top, Lauren as the adorable baby, and me somewhere in the invisible middle. My earliest memory of Travis's cruelty dates back to first grade. I had spent weeks working on an art project for the school fair. It was a detailed diorama of our neighborhood, complete with tiny houses and paper trees. The night before the fair, I found it destroyed, torn apart, and scattered across my bedroom floor. When my parents rushed in to see what had happened, Travis was already there, shaking his head sadly. Miranda got mad because her project wasn't good enough, he lied smoothly. I tried to help her fix it, but she pushed me away. Despite my tearful denials, my parents believed him. They always did. That night, I cried myself to sleep while my father helped Travis build his own project in the garage. The next day, Travis won first place with a project my father had mostly created while I showed up empty-handed. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When I made honor roll in middle school, Travis told her parents I had cheated on tests. When I was invited to senior prom by the boy I'd liked for years, Travis casually mentioned to him that I had been talking about another boy. My date canceled, 3 days before prom. College should have been my escape, but family holidays and summer breaks meant returning to the same toxic environment. During my sophomore year, I brought home Dean, my first serious boyfriend. Travis spent the entire weekend telling embarrassing stories about me, most of which were exaggerated or entirely fabricated. Dean broke up with me a week later. After graduation, I secured a position at a prestigious architectural firm in the city. At family gatherings, whenever I tried to share my accomplishments, Travis would interrupt with his own news or change the subject entirely. If I designed a new office building, Travis had just closed a bigger real estate deal. If I received a promotion, Travis had just acquired a new investment property. My relationship with my cousin Alicia added another layer of pain to family dynamics. We had once been close, almost like sisters, until Grandmother Rose passed away 5 years ago. Grandmother had always promised me her antique silver locket, a family heirloom passed down through generations. She had told me stories about it throughout my childhood, explaining how it had traveled from Ireland with our ancestors during the potato famine. The day after Grandmother's funeral, I went to her bedroom to collect the locket, only to discover it missing. Later that day, I spotted it around Alicia's neck. When I confronted her, she claimed Grandmother had given it to her privately. Despite knowing this was a lie, my family sided with Alicia. My mother suggested I was confused by grief, while my father told me not to make a scene at such a difficult time. Every family gathering since then, Alicia has worn that locket, a constant reminder of what was stolen from me and how little my family last year had been particularly difficult. I received a significant promotion at work, becoming the youngest senior architect in my firm's history. I purchased a beautiful apartment in the city with a view of the park. I was featured in an architectural magazine for my innovative, sustainable design concepts. Yet, at Thanksgiving dinner, my family spent the entire meal discussing Travis's new vacation home and Lauren's wedding plans. My promotion was mentioned only in passing, with my mother quickly changing the subject to ask Travis about his golf game. After that Thanksgiving, I started seeing Dr. Marshall, a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Our sessions helped me recognize the patterns of manipulation and emotional abuse I had normalized. Dr. Marshall suggested I set boundaries, perhaps even taking a break from family gatherings until I felt stronger. But they're still my family, I had insisted. If I could just make them see me, really see me, maybe things could change. Dr. Marshall's expression had been sympathetic but doubtful. Sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into, she said gently. Still, I decided to try one more time with Christmas. I spent weeks preparing the perfect gifts. For my mother, a handcrafted scarf in her favorite shade of blue. For my father, a first edition of his favorite mystery novel. For Lauren, a custom photo, album of her wedding preparations. And for Travis, something special, something that had taken careful planning. Under the elegant wrapping paper was a bound collection of evidence I had gathered over years. Emails he had sent undermining me to family members, screenshots of messages where he admitted to lying about me, a recording from last Christmas where he mockingly described how easy it was to turn our parents against me, and finally, a note explaining that this would be my last attempt to show them who he really was. I had debated for weeks whether to bring this gift. Dr. Marshall had warned me that confrontations rarely change deeply entrenched family dynamics, but some part of me needed to try to make one final stand before potentially walking away forever. So on Christmas morning, I packed my car with carefully wrapped presents, a homemade apple pie using Grandmother Rose's recipe, and hoped that perhaps this year would be different. I drove to my parents' suburban home with butterflies in my stomach, rehearsing what I would say if Travis started his usual tactics. What I never prepared for was being told I wasn't even worthy of a seat at the table. I arrived at my parents' colonial home at exactly 3:00 p.m., the designated time for Christmas dinner. The house looked like something from a holiday magazine cover with twinkling white lights outlining the roof and windows, a wreath adorned with red berries on the front door, and two perfectly symmetrical Christmas trees flanking the entrance. Before ringing the doorbell, I took a moment to check my appearance in my car mirror. I had spent extra time getting ready, wearing a forest green dress that complemented my auburn hair, which I had styled in loose waves. My makeup was subtle but polished. I looked good, confident, professional, the version of myself I wanted, my family to finally see and respect. The door swung open to reveal my mother, elegant as always in a red cashmere sweater and pearl earrings. "Miranda," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're right on time." The observation seemed more accusation than compliment. I stepped inside, arms laden with gifts and my pie. My mother accepted the dessert with a cursory thank you before disappearing into the kitchen without offering to help with the presents or take my coat. In the living room, a very different scene was unfolding. My father was enthusiastically embracing Lauren and her husband Patrick, laughing at something Patrick had said. "That's my son-in-law," he exclaimed, clapping Patrick on the back. Across the room, Travis was holding court with our aunts and uncles, gesturing animatedly as they listened with rapt attention. His wife, Rachel, stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, diamond bracelet catching the light from the chandelier. "Miranda's here," my mother announced flatly as she returned from the kitchen. A few heads turned my way, offering perfunctory smiles and distracted waves before returning to their conversations. Only Lauren broke away to give me a brief hug. "Nice dress," she said, before lowering her voice. "Just so you know, Mom's been stressed about dinner all day, so maybe don't bring up work stuff. Last time you talked about your promotion, she had a migraine for 2 days." Before I could respond, Alicia entered the room with her new boyfriend. "Everyone, this is Justin," she announced. The family swarmed around them, asking questions and offering drinks. Around Alicia's neck, catching the light from the Christmas tree, hung Grandmother Rose's silver locket. I placed my gifts under the tree and moved toward a group of relatives, attempting to join their conversation about recent travel. My Aunt Barbara was describing her cruise to Alaska when I approached. "It sounds amazing," I said during a pause. "I've been researching sustainable tourism options for my next vacation." My aunt glanced at me, nodded vaguely, then turned slightly to exclude me from the circle. Anyway, as I was saying about the glaciers, this pattern repeated throughout the pre-dinner mingling. Conversations stopped when I approached. Family members excused themselves to refresh their drinks. Questions about my life were superficial, and brief, immediately redirected to more interesting topics. When it was time for family photos, my mother organized everyone in front of the fireplace. Travis and Rachel in the center, she directed. Lauren and Patrick on the left, Alicia and Justin on the right. She positioned aunts, uncles, and cousins around them, then stepped back to assess the arrangement. "Mom," I said quietly. Where should I stand? She blinked as if just remembering I was there. Oh, Miranda, could you actually take the photo? You're so good with that sort of thing. I swallowed the lump in my throat and took the camera, capturing multiple shots of my smiling family while I remained invisible behind the lens. Later, as I helped arrange appetizers on the dining room sideboard, Travis approached. He looked me up and down with that familiar smirk. Green is certainly a bold choice for your complexion, he said just loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear. But I guess architecture firms don't exactly prioritize fashion sense, do they? I forced a smile. How's the real estate market, Travis? I heard interest rates have made things challenging. His eyes narrowed slightly. For amateurs, maybe. My portfolio's never been stronger. He leaned closer, voice dropping, speaking a strong, "How's your therapy going?" Mom mentioned, "You've been getting help for your issues." Heat rushed to my face. My therapy sessions were private. I had only told my mother in confidence during a rare moment when she had seemed genuinely concerned about me. I'm doing very well. Thank you, I replied stiffly, arranging stuffed mushrooms on a platter with more force than necessary. Travis chuckled, satisfied at having provoked a reaction. Good to hear. We're all very concerned about your stability. He patted my shoulder condescendingly before rejoining his wife. Across the room, I spotted Alicia touching the locket as she laughed at something Justin said. Our eyes met briefly, and I thought I detected a flicker of guilt before she deliberately turned away. As the afternoon wore on, I began noticing something odd about the dining room setup. My mother was a stickler for tradition, always using her best china, crystal glasses, and silver plate settings for holiday meals. The table was already set beautifully with the Christmas china, matching napkins folded into perfect swans and named cards at each place. I casually walked around the table, counting places and looking for my name. 10 settings, 10 chairs, 12 people, including me. My name card was nowhere to be found. Mom, I asked, finding her in the kitchen basting the turkey. I don't see my place card at the table. She kept her eyes on the oven. Don't worry about that now, Miranda. Why don't you make yourself useful and refill the ice bucket? An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as I did as she asked. When I returned with the ice, I overheard my mother whispering to my aunt in the hallway. I don't know why she's making such a fuss, my mother was saying. It's not like she ever enjoys these gatherings anyway, always sitting there with that look on her face. But Susan, my aunt replied, surely there's room to squeeze in one. More chair. My mother sighed dramatically. Richard's back has been bothering him. He needs space at the table, and Travis specifically asked that we keep things intimate this year. You know how he feels about Miranda's attitude. They fell silent as they noticed me standing there, ice bucket in hand. My aunt at least had the grace to look embarrassed while my mother simply took the ice and walked away. I retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Staring at my reflection, I wondered how I could have been so naive. I had come hoping for acceptance for a place in my family when they had already decided I didn't deserve one. Literally. Taking a deep breath, I splashed cold water on my face and reapplied my lipstick. I had two choices: leave now and preserve what little dignity I had left, or stay and see this through to whatever humiliating conclusion awaited me. I thought about Travis's gift, sitting innocently under the tree. I thought about years of exclusion and gaslighting. I thought about Dr. Marshall's words about chosen family. Then I straightened my shoulders, unlocked the bathroom door, and headed back to the living room. I would see T. Standing in that doorway, excluded from my own family Christmas dinner, I felt a strange calm descend over me. It was as if I was watching the scene from outside my body, seeing with perfect clarity what had been true all along. This wasn't new behavior. This was simply the most honest version of what had been happening my entire life. Memories flashed through my mind in rapid succession. Age 7, waiting alone after ballet practice because my parents forgot to pick me up, too busy attending Travis's baseball game. Age 12, eating lunch alone in the school bathroom after Travis told everyone I had lice. Age 16, not being allowed to go to homecoming because Travis said he'd seen me smoking behind the gym. A complete fabrication. My college graduation, where my parents left early because Travis claimed to have food poisoning. Job promotions met with indifference. Holidays where my gifts were open last and with minimal enthusiasm. The pattern was undeniable. I had spent decades making excuses for their behavior, telling myself that if I just achieved more, spoke more eloquently, dressed more appropriately, somehow I would finally earn their love and respect. But standing there watching them begin to eat as if my exclusion was the most natural thing in the world, I finally understood. Nothing I could ever do would be enough because the problem had never been me. A curious warmth spread through my chest, replacing the cold ache of rejection. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was something more powerful. Liberation. The freedom that comes with finally acknowledging a painful truth instead of running from it. Dr. Marshall's words from our last session echoed in my mind. Miranda, you keep trying to win a game that's rigged against you. The only winning move might be not to play. Under Travis's plate sat the envelope I had carefully placed there earlier. Inside was evidence I had collected over years of his manipulation, screenshots of text messages where he bragged to friends about turning our parents against me, emails he had sent to family members planting seeds of doubt about my character and stability, a recording from last Thanksgiving where he admitted to deliberately sabotaging my relationships, a copy of Grandmother Rose's while specifically leaving her locket to me, which the family had never seen because Travis had intercepted it. I had gathered these pieces meticulously, initially planning to confront the entire family to force them to see the truth about their golden boy. I had imagined tears, apologies, a dramatic reconciliation, the fantasy of finally being embraced as an equal member of the family. But now, looking at them all comfortable in their exclusion of me, I realized that fantasy had always been just that. Even with irrefutable evidence, they would find a way to excuse Travis, to blame me, to maintain the family mythology they had invested in for decades. I considered my options. I could create a scene dumping the evidence on the table and demanding acknowledgement. I could break down in tears, appealing to whatever shreds of empathy they might possess. I could grab Travis's plate and throw it against the wall. Decades of repressed anger finally finding release. But each of those scenarios gave them power over me. Each made me the unstable one, the problem to be managed. Each would reinforce the narrative Travis had so carefully constructed. Or I could choose a different path. I could recognize that I deserved better than fighting for scraps of affection from people who had demonstrated time and again that they were incapable of giving it freely. I could acknowledge that family isn't just about blood relations, but about mutual respect and care. I could choose myself. In that moment, I made my decision. I would not beg for a seat at a table where I wasn't wanted. I would not expose Travis's manipulations to people who had actively participated in my exclusion. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I would leave them with something that would speak louder than any emotional outburst. I would leave them with the truth and the knowledge that I was done playing by their rules. The family continued eating, conversation gradually resuming as they collectively decided to ignore the uncomfortable scene. Travis was telling some story about a difficult client, gesturing with his fork, reveling in being the center of attention as always. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, no longer waiting in the doorway but entering the room with purpose. My movement caught their attention, conversations faltering as all eyes turned toward me. I walked directly to the Christmas tree and picked up my gift for Travis. The room was utterly silent now, everyone watching with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. With measured steps, I approached the table, the wrapped package in my hands. I stood directly behind Travis's chair, feeling a strange sense of power as he had to twist awkwardly to look up at me. For once, I was the one looking down at him. The dining room fell silent as I stood behind Travis, gift in hand. My heart pounded, but my voice remained steady when I finally spoke. Travis, I said, my tone calm and clear, I brought something special for you this Christmas. His expression shifted from annoyance to weariness. He knew me well enough to sense something had changed, that this wasn't the same Miranda who typically absorbed his cruelty with quiet hurt. Can it wait until after dinner? My mother interjected, her voice strained. We've just started eating. No, I replied simply. It can't. I placed the elegantly wrapped box beside Travis's plate, The paper was silver with subtle snowflakes tied with a blue ribbon that matched his eyes that now regarded me with suspicion. "What is this?" he asked, not touching the package. "Open it," I suggested. "Or don't. But either way, check under your plate." Travis's face pad slightly. His hand moved instinctively to the edge of his plate, but he hesitated. "What are you talking about?" my father demanded, finally finding his voice. "Miranda, you're disrupting dinner." "I'm disrupting dinner," I repeated, a small laugh escaping me. "Not the fact that you've all decided I should eat in my car. Not Travis suggesting you'd be wasting a seat on me." Uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. Lauren looked down at her lap. Alicia fidgeted with her napkin. "You're being dramatic," Travis said, attempting to regain control. "It's just seating arrangements. Not everything is about you." "You're right." I agreed. "It's not about me. It's about you, Travis. It always has been." I gestured toward his plate. "Go ahead, look underneath." Something in my tone must have unsettled him because Travis actually pushed back his chair slightly. With obvious reluctance, he lifted his plate, revealing the cream-colored envelope beneath. The table watched in tense silence as he opened it and removed the contents. His face, always so controlled, so practiced at projecting confidence, visibly shifted as he scanned the first page. Color drained from his cheeks, then rushed back as anger replaced shock. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice tight. "The truth," I replied simply. "Something this family isn't particularly familiar with." His eyes darted back to the papers, then up to me, then around the table. For perhaps the first time in his life, Travis Parker was speechless. "What is it?" my mother asked, stretching to see across the table. "Nothing," Travis said quickly, attempting to stuff the papers back into the envelope. "It's evidence," I said calmly. "Screenshots of texts where Travis brags about turning you against me, emails where he undermines me to family members, a recording from last Thanksgiving where he admits to lying about me for years." Rachel, Travis's wife, frowned and reached for the envelope. "Let me see that." Travis pulled it away from her. "It's nothing. Miranda's making things up as usual." "Am I?" I asked. "Then why are you hiding it? If I'm lying, show everyone." Travis's jaw clenched. He knew he was caught. "There's also a copy of Grandmother Rose's will," I continued, looking directly at Alicia, the one specifically leaving her locket to me. Alicia's hand flew to the locket around her neck. "I didn't." "She gave it to me," she stammered. "No, she didn't," I said firmly. "Travis told you I didn't want it. He intercepted the will and convinced you that Grandmother had changed her mind." Alicia turned to Travis, confusion and betrayal dawning on her face. "Is that true?" Travis stood, abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and listen to these accusations." "Then don't," I replied. "But everyone should know that I've made copies of everything in that envelope. I'm done protecting this family's illusions about their golden boy." My father finally found his voice. "Miranda, that's enough. This is Christmas dinner, for God's sake." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "A dinner I wasn't welcome at. A family I've never truly been welcome in." I turned my attention back to Travis, who was now gripping the envelope so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "Check under your plate again," I instructed. With visible reluctance, he lifted his plate once more to reveal a small handwritten note I had placed beneath the envelope. "Read it," I said. Travis's eyes scanned the note, his expression hardening. When he didn't speak, I recited the words I had written hours earlier. "This is the last time I will try to make you see me. The last time I will fight for a place in this family. I release you from the burden of pretending to care about me, and I release myself from the burden of seeking your approval." The silence that followed was profound. Around the table, expressions ranged from shock to discomfort to the beginning glimmers of understanding. I took a step back, surveying the scene one last time. The perfect table setting. The family G.